By now, you might have discovered that I am not someone who likes to talk without the facts. But I have heard it from so many Cuban professionals, doctors, and so on, in Jamaica, that their pay structure is not as ours is, just for putting it mildly. So I'm going to jump right into today's video, and we're talking about this letter that has been released, and it has confirmed everything that was said. So in other words, the truth is what was being spoken all along. Now, paraphrasing the letter, it indicates that in July of 2025, the government of Jamaica was alerted to the fact that the 50-year contract where we would receive medical professionals, and in all honesty, all Cuban workers, when they arrive in Jamaica for work, everything was taken care of through their own channels. You see, Cuba is a state that regulates everything. So they send their information, they send their list over of persons who will be coming, and as a country, and in this particular instance, it would have been the Ministry of Health for the medical people, they would secure accommodation, they would have the placements for each individual, and whatever the remuneration is, that would also be channeled through the sourcing agency, let's put it that way. And so we did our part based on whatever is the contract. If it's 50 years old, you can imagine. I'm going to just get our Prime Minister into it simply because he and I are the same age. He was but a toddler, so was I, when this 50-year-old agreement would have been inked. So take it as that. He goes into government and there is a system and it has been functional. That's what we're working with. Now, this document of which I speak that we will embed in the video, and you may pause the video, take a screenshot, a screen record, and have it at your own leisure to review. It states that it came to the knowledge of the government that the entity that receives payment was not paying over all the funds to the doctors and nurses. And so they started a process. And that process led to, I like the term, quiet diplomacy with the Cuban hierarchy in Jamaica through its embassy, I would want to say, regarding becoming more compliant with the labor laws and the pay situation, pay structures of the island of Jamaica. And you and I know that anywhere in the world you go, irregardless of your nationality, once you are employed, you disregard what was normal in the country you're from, and you now follow the established norms of that country in which you now abide. So, this is what happened. The situation where the Ministry of Health would pay the contracting entity and they in turn pay the doctors was contrary to our pay systems, and the fact that even though the doctors, nurses, technicians, all of the medical people were being paid in US dollars, and this is what I'm thinking would have been stipulated in the agreement, they would, or put it this way, we would not necessarily know what they would be receiving in their in their pockets, in their hands. I guess it's interesting because it's opening my questions to if they were paid through the bank, as typically working in Jamaica really requires that you open a bank account You have your salary deposited to the bank account, you get a pay slip with the tax breakdown and so on. If the contracting entity receives all the salary each month, because usually medical people are paid monthly, and we wanted to do a trace on the actual funds that were being paid over, then if they were being deposited into accounts locally, that would have been clear to see. So my assumption is when that entity receives the funds, they disperse it in a manner convenient to them, to the doctors, nurses, technicians, etc. So as I'm making the video, I'm actually analyzing, because yeah, we have to analyze things. So here we are now. Two things came to the attention of the government that needed to be resolved. And if you go back to our earlier video, when Senator Marco Rubio, we will go back to confirming what is his title. We like to use people's titles. When he came to Jamaica and there was this conversation about human trafficking, slavery, even with how the medical professionals and others from Cuba were being dealt with. Of course, our entities that came out, saying, oh, no, 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 that's not so. My grandmother would have said, you don't see smoke without fire. So, here we go now. It turns out that there are two issues that the government needed to exercise control over and amend to be in keeping with international laws and, of course, regulating what the United States of America had brought to the fore. One, the fact that the Cubans were not being paid in their hands, and two, that they did not have their travel documents. So you arrive in Jamaica, all the fanfare when there was fanfare, and you were whisked away to your accommodation. You're provided with equipment. The terms of engagement are fulfilled to you, the person, in that you get what is agreed to physically, but somebody else get the money that you work, and they pay you what they deem fit. It, of course, jumps me to the thought that, do you get a livable wage in Jamaica? Because we know Jamaica is very expensive. But of course, what are some of the trade-offs? You are free in this little island of ours. You are free to move about, something that is restricted in their home country. We know that. You are free to make other types of work engagements. So in other words, you can do sessions outside of your locale where you're assigned. You can do other types of work. I know Jamaica. You can work other money. You can do whatever else you want to do. You're free. But they also hold your passport, so you cannot leave Jamaica. So when you get leave, because of course you're working in our system, these agreements of cooperation are not always for short periods. Some of them might be for years. So at the end of your 12-month period, when your vacation leave comes up, you are entitled to take a leave. And when you get your leave, you can go to a resort, you can rent an Airbnb, you can stay home and fix up your house, you can do anything you want within the confines of Jamaica. And again, I say, So the thought process is, you are free within the confines of the physical land in which you have been seconded to. I like that word, sound like Yeah, but you've been sent to this country, that's the only place you're going. Stay. Don't even get any dreams, any thoughts, any wishes to travel like your Jamaican counterparts. Do not believe that you can jump on a plane and go to Dominican Republic, where I will love to be, and run down to Punta Cana for the weekend. No, you have to stay right here. So on this little rock. But the rock has enough for you according to the powers that be and the documentation that you would have signed off on and agreed to leave your country. But then think about it. You have all the food in the world you want, which is a scarcity where they come from. You don't have to go through this rationing process, so you don't have to get 5 pounds of rice, 5 pounds of flour, 1 liter of oil to serve you for the month. You can consume as much and as varied as you wish as it is available. You have all the imported brands on the shelves from everywhere, because you know Jamaica taking everybody something. So you will get the snacks and the treats and the meats and the eats from pretty much all over. So you have been given a great range of freedom. Why would you, coming from a land of restricted freedom, not be happy with that? But then again, why would you? Because you are not living in a vacuum. You arrive in Jamaica, and as I like to say, it is very easy to get used to good life. So you come to Jamaica where life is very different. You have colleagues, they're making plans, they're doing things, they're talking about their trips to here and there. You know Jamaicans like to travel. You know every moment we get free time, we gone somewhere. It is just the way it is. So it is normal. And I am not talking off the top of my head. I am talking from a situation where back in the day, when Cubans came to the North Coast, it seemed as though it was a rite of passage for those who were already here to take them to introduce them to me. Maybe because people heard that I was very kind to, the Cubans, and I received them well and helped them to integrate. Not because anybody commissioned me to do it, certainly it was not a paid endeavor. I just like people. I like help people set up themselves and be successful. So while that season in my life lasted, I got an opportunity to know quite a lot of the Cuban medical people who came. So with that said, what was the end result of all of this? What led us to where we are today? Well, according to the document that we mentioned from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and initially I said Ministry of Health simply because they're doctors and nurses, but honestly, I should have read. I was so interested in the body of the letter, I didn't even look at the issuing agency. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs indicated that, much to their disappointment, Cuba did not accept their terms of engagement. The two areas that were of concern that needed to be adjusted, Cuba stood firm. They decided, no, we're not giving them back their passport. No, we are not going to have their pay become available to them. And there are many things that we could say. And I have said it. My grandmother did tell me, though, it's not everything good to eat, good to talk. And so it's not everything you need to put out there, because some things you just tuck into your bosom and you hold it close to your chest. But if you all know what I'm not saying, you can read between the lines, can't you? So here we go. Based on this, and somebody in a comment said pressure bus pipe. We will just leave it at that. When you need to make adjustments, because you see, I don't mind being politically correct and leave you to fill in the blanks. When you are being encouraged to regularize your industries and your systems, then you want to follow what is the established protocol. And before some of you get ready to jump and to say in the comments, oh, but how come and why shouldn't, and yeah, let us switch things up a little bit, because you see, for many of us as Jamaicans and people in general, it's all good and well to say what you feel until the shoe is on the other foot. So I came prepared for those of you who want to get all excited. And let us use a similar real to life situation, that of the farm work program. And I can speak specifically to the farm work program under the Ministry of Labor that sends workers from Jamaica to Canada. You see, once upon a time, I was the spouse of such an individual. And so I have first-hand experience. Isn't it nice when you can speak from experience? It makes things so much easier to explain. Now, there was a season, and in my knowledge, this was the established protocol where the farm workers who were about to go off on the program would establish a bank account. This account was where their pay that came directly from Canada to the Ministry of Labor would be deposited. Notice I never call the bank name because too much information sometimes can be too much information. But hey, needless to say, when they got their pay slips, oh my goodness, I had a thought, but we won't go there. I will not show a pay slip because of privacy. But their pay slips would show the amount that was paid out to them in hand via their bank accounts in Canada, and then it would show the portion that was sent over to Jamaica. And basically, I would want to say a third of what was earned was sent back to Jamaica to what was called their savings, their compulsory savings. Because I would want to imagine that when the program got started eons ago, there was a thought that they didn't want the farm workers to spend it all and come home and have nothing. And so the agreement was part goes directly into the hands of the workers while in Canada, and another part comes home to Jamaica so they would have savings. And that part that was received locally should also have their statutory deductions removed. NHT, NIS, what else? NHT, NIS, or all of them, PAYE, all of them, right? Don't know if they paid PAYE, but all of our statutory deductions, education tax and whatnot. And so when all of that was removed, then they would deposit the remaining amount into said bank account. And I'm telling you all of this because we are compare and contrast. One of the challenges I experienced as the then spouse of said farm worker was that long after they returned, the deposits did not make its way in a timely manner into the accounts. And sometimes it would be up on the time of departure to take up another contract that the balance of whatever was coming in tricklets, and tricklets is not a word, but sometimes it trickled in so slowly that I figure it was a tricklet. The tricklets were so far and few and so between, far and few between, in between. I'm talking all kind of gibberish, but y'all understand. It was so far and in between. That's not even the term, but hey, you know what I mean. That sometimes it's when the man, them woman, because there were women too, when the people were ready to return to Canada, that the rest of the money was finally trickling into the account. And there were expenses related to travel that they had to pay every single time before they left. So you can imagine, you come home and you know that a third at least of your funds would be there waiting for you. And so you do what you have to do with the funds in hand, only to come home and you have to be calling the ministry. You have to be going through all kinds of requests to get money. You have to be telling them your private business, who's sick, who have exam, which picnic just passed, for go to high school. It was really, really, in my mind, dehumanizing. And so, with that said, there was a year when it all came to a head. The decision was made, no more sending money to Jamaica on the behalf of the farm workers. They are adults, they can manage their own business, let them get all of them money, let them pay all of them taxes, and manage their own affairs. Now, I must take a pin because even though it was said that the taxes would be paid, including NHT, there is no record in the case that I am personally familiar with of the NHT deductions being credited, nor when it was time for the NHT refunds to be claimed, that these made up a part of the amounts that were being claimed for. Question marks abound. But context is what I want you to see. The difference between the Cuban program and the Jamaican program was that there was a time when persons were not happy that all that they worked was not being made available to them. And the call, which was so loud, so deafening, was eventually answered. Cubans didn't have that benefit. They didn't have that benefit. They didn't have that person, that entity, that structure, that system to speak up on their behalf. And so when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs entered into negotiation and said, no man, no man, no man, no, no, that not right. They were not offered the same latitude that our people benefited from. A change in policy, a change in direction, a more equitable distribution of the funds that they had put the sweat in to earn. So when Jamaica said, if you cannot conform, they have to leave, we did not necessarily, and I'm just speaking because I think you want to give people time to end their arrangement. We did not assume, or did they? I did not assume that it would be an immediate withdrawal. I would not have assumed that right on the heels of Jamaica saying, no, no, we cannot continue like this, that Cuba would have said, send them home. No. Send them back. No. We want back with people. Them. No. We finished. We're done. We draw the line. It over. Didn't expect that that would have been so quick. I thought they would have probably have had a little time to establish themselves, to tidy up themselves. You remember that car when me tell you, so them probably have acquired, that they'll get a chance to seek a resale. But no, instant. Kind of like when the farm workers in Canada too were finished with their jobs. When their contracts ended, it ended today. Remember, 2 days time if you're lucky, you get your plane date and it's homebound. So here we have it. This might have been a lengthier discussion than I wanted, but I really wanted to put it in context. And as it relates to the passport issue, we cannot leave without it. I cannot speak with authority on that. I do not recall how the passport situation went with the farm workers. I'm tempted to think that they kept their passports. I could be wrong. But I know there was one discussion, for example, where there was a day in this particular instance where they were headed to Niagara Falls, which is what makes me believe that they could keep their passports. And the person that was affiliated with me, having a US visa, entered into a conversation of going over to the States for the day while they were in Niagara, but was alerted to the fact that the work permit that was issued had a one entry application for Canada. So, in other words, even though they could have left and gone over to Niagara, which brings me to the thought that they were allowed to keep their passports, then couldn't it come back? Because your one entry say when you get into the country, you're not permitted to leave until it's time. Which you kind of wonder, isn't it similar but different? Yeah, so all of this, I'd really love if all of you could jump in to the comment section and let us really talk about these developments, because boy, when Donkey said ground level, him did know what I talk about. So as usual, Sherry have lots to say. Let us keep the conversation going, no? Ciao for now.